or not. A senior French military official has said that one of al-Qaeda's senior field commanders in the Sahara, Abdelhamid Abu Zaid, has probably been killed in Mali. The Chadian army, fighting alongside French forces, has claimed it killed Abu Zaid and fellow militant Mokhtar Belmokhtar in a recent round of clashes. Still, until a body has been found, Abu Zaid's death cannot be confirmed. Now, Western and regional nations are worried that al-Qaeda is going to use the area as a launch pad for international attacks. They also fear it may strengthen ties with homegrown Islamist groups such as al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria. But if both Abu Zaid and Belmokhtar have indeed been killed, what does it mean for al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb? Is it the beginning of the end for the jihadist group? And for the Hollande government, what does it mean for those 15 French hostages believed to still be held by al-Qaeda operatives in the region? And joining me to discuss this is William Jordan, the former Deputy Chief of Mission at the US Embassy of Algiers, Richard Young, a French Socialist senator who's been working closely with the Malian community here in France while monitoring the French military operation, Dougoukolo Konare, who's from Mali and currently a researcher at Paris Descartes, and from London, Omar Ashour, a specialist in Middle East studies at the University of Exeter. But first, let's head to Gao in northern Mali, and I'd like to speak to correspondent Katerina Hoyt. Katerina, what has been the reaction to the news that Abu Zaid possibly has been killed? I'm terribly sorry. We seem to be having technical problems and we don't seem to be able to get Katerina on the line. So I'm sorry about that. Maybe you might be able to come back to her later in the program. William, we were talking earlier about al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and the reality is that the head of the organisation, Abdelmalek Djoukdel, is still believed to be hiding in the Kabila region of Algeria, a mountainous region. He's gone so far as even sending out manifestos to his fighters on the ground, apparently in northern Mali, according to journalists who got into Timbuktu and found these documents, where he was berating them for not doing enough to sort of gain or win the hearts and minds of the local, and also by the fact that they destroyed various iconic sites and historic sites as such. I mean, how much sway does this gentleman still hold over the organisation?
Well, he's still the leader of the organization, which is, everybody has to remember, principally an Algerian organization and principally an organization dedicated to fighting the Algerian government to bring it down and install an Islamic State in Algeria. I mean, it is the vestige of the struggle that was referred to earlier that started about 20 years ago in Algeria when the military annulled the parliamentary elections that seemed to be on the verge of being won by the Islamists. Djoukdel, I think, that document intrigued me because it suggested a connection to and a potential interest or an interest in what was going on in northern Mali that was stronger than I would have expected. And it tended to undercut the theory that what was happening in northern Mali was purely an alliance of convenience, but there might have actually been some real ideological or political thought from AQIM central leadership in what was going on. But it's hard to, I think, ascribe too much to that, except as a criticism, sort of post facto, of what happened and how the situation in northern Mali turned against the jihadists and ultimately led to the situation that brought the French intervention and ultimately what we're seeing now in terms of the jihadists being surrounded and possibly on the verge of being eliminated.
Richard.
Yes, let me offer, we are having a difficult war in the north of Mali, especially in the mountains, in the Adrar de Ifora, which very mountainous, very rocky. They can hide everywhere. So it's that part of the military job is a very difficult one for the French army, also for the Chadian army, which is our ally. You never know if you can completely win from the military point of view this kind of war, because you always have groups who stay, who can survive. It's a
problem the world over when you're fighting insurgents in a difficult terrain, isn't it?
It's difficult. You have no certainty. And the real problem then becomes political. It was mentioned. The real problem will then be what kind of political discussion, debate, solution can the Malian government, the Malian parliament, which has to be elected, can offer to the northern people, to the Tuareg people. That is the core of the problem. This has been going on for many, many years. This is not a new problem. It was even there when the French were ruling the country. But at this point, we know that the Tuareg people have the feeling that they have been left aside, and we have no political solution at the time in Bamako, because the government is a provisional government. They must have elections. We hope they can do them, have these elections before summer. We have this military man, Sanogo, who is around Bamako, and you don't really know what game he is playing. This has to be clarified if we want to move forward.
Absolutely, and at this point, I just actually want to bring in Omar, because one thing that's come out in the last few weeks is the fact that there appears to be many Islamist jihadist groups that are operating in northern Mali. I think we've got a graphic here listing some of them, and it appears they've grown in numbers, which is an indication that the movement is splintering as such. Is it not, Omar?
It is. This usually happens when there is a crackdown. The best way to fight a powerful military force is to just decentralize, especially in a rugged area, and have your own small groups fighting. And these small groups usually take up different names and have sometimes different leadership structure. The problem with that is that if you want to negotiate at some point, and this is what usually happens, you won't find a clear leadership, and we're already to talk to, and we're already having some of that. And what Dougoukolo had advised or ordered was not accepted. And this has been a pattern with Al-Qaeda franchises in general. They don't listen to the central, and they don't listen usually except to their very local leadership, which is no surprise. Even jihadi politics is a local politics. But the other issue is that I agree, this is a political problem that was very much ingrained in Mali. And a political problem that happened in Algeria a couple of decades ago, and we still see its consequences until now. And without the resolution of these two issues, without a clear state-building, national identity-building process in Mali, a democratization process that is actually more solid, and a security sector reform problem in both of Mali and Algeria, I don't think we will have any long-term solutions. This is an offshoot of a problem. It's not the main issue in both cases.
Dougoukolo, it sounds pretty depressing, doesn't it?
It does, actually. Before coming back to the political issues, I would like to say that I have heard so many informations coming from people from the field, from the ground, from the north of Mali, saying sometimes many of the people who led divisions, they felt like they didn't have a choice. They were in a situation where they didn't have any money. They were getting orders from different rebel groups saying, okay, you need to become the new allies of such group. Others saying, you need to stay out of the cities, etc. So when there's a situation of danger, they just make the alliances that can sustain them, keep them alive. And those people are locals, so they can get around anyway. And my second point actually about politics is that I think the clear lack of leadership on a nationwide level is one of the deep causes of this conflict, because as someone from the west of the country or as someone from the north, etc., if you feel like there's no leadership and you're being left outside alone in a way, how can you trust the people saying, come back to us? The people in Kidal, The people in Mauritania, in Burkina, or in Niger, those people, they are refugees, and they have few proofs that the government can sustain them if they were to ever come back to Mali.
It really is a case, though, isn't it, where the state is weak, the tribes are strong, and this is.
Well, I think it's because the state is weak, so the tribes are strong. If people feel like they cannot trust the state, of course they're going to turn back to the tribes for support. And right now in Bamako, to tell you the truth, it doesn't feel like there's one direction that is being followed. We don't even know if the president is actually safe and if he's not being pointed a gun at by the junta that doesn't, who appears to have been dismantled, but in fact they're not.
William, I just want to talk to you about something which we haven't yet addressed, and that's the fate of those French hostages, 15 of them in the region, 7 of which probably are in northern Mali. What impact will this news, if indeed, as I say, that they do confirm that Abu Zaid is dead, what impact will it have on the fate of those people?
I think it makes their fate even more complicated than it already was, but let's not be under any illusions. I mean, their prospects were pretty grim to begin with. I mean, perhaps because I'm an American and not a French person, I can easily say that. But in my conversations with French officials over the years, I mean, as these hostages have been taken, there has been an understanding that their ultimate fate is probably 50-50 in terms of whether they live or die, given the record.
That's a very grim percentage.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why, in the wake of several of these kidnappings, the French immediately issued perhaps the most stark travel warnings to nationals in the area to avoid those areas and to take extremely secure precautions in order to avoid being the victims of this type of terrorism.
Richard, the fact that we're hearing the news that possibly these 2 men have been killed, is it a sign, however, that the operation is being somewhat successful?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think that's pretty clear, not only through the possible death of these 2 leaders, but generally speaking, you have seen how the bigger cities have been taken, but that was probably the more easier side of things. And now, as I mentioned earlier, we are waging a difficult battle in the mountains. But, we still have hope for the hostages. There are examples in time when they have been, they have come back to freedom. So we all hope for them. It's very difficult, of course, for their family and for us. But let me say one more thing. There is another enemy in the whole region, and that is drug traffic. That is the most powerful tool which has dismantled everything in the Sahara. All the structures, the official structures, the armies, the tribes, they are all dismantled through the wish to get their hands on the drug traffic.
And at this point, I just want to ask Omar about this, because just to recap for the viewer, what we're hearing from various analysts and commentators in the area is that basically the drug trade effectively for cocaine now used to run from Latin America up through Central America into North America, some of which now has been diverted to West Africa, to places such as Mali, making its way inevitably to Western Europe. And that is something that certainly would need to be addressed as well as a political solution if indeed you are to bring about peace to the region, surely?
Yes, definitely. And this is again bring us to the issue of security sector reform. If you have a security apparatus that has some kind of oversight by the civilians, by the elected civilians, have some kind of investment in its training procedures, in its professional identity, as opposed to tribal identity, or as opposed to other kind of identities, and more or less accountable to the authorities in the region, as opposed to whether tribes or drug traffickers or other kind of criminal organizations. then things will move forward. And without this prospect of security sector reform in the region, and I'm talking in the regional basis, Mali obviously particularly, but also Algeria, because it's until now there are more than 30 Western hostages were killed in this operation in Ain Aminas, and their families need to know whether they really had the chance, or could they have been saved or not. And the same applies obviously to the more than 100,000 of so of the Algerian civil wars as well, whether this could have been avoided or not. So I think it's very critical for both terrorism and for drug trafficking is to address this issue of security sector reform in the region.
Dougoukolo, what do you say to that?
Well, we do not actually produce drugs in Mali, so they have to come from somewhere else. And I believe that transnational cooperation with regards to a better, more strict control of drug networks in the world and in West Africa, in Guinea-Bissau and in Guinea-Conakry, those might be ways to sort of stop the road to the Sahara and to the Mediterranean countries, and in a way cut the money that those traffickers and those rebels, those bandits can actually make to buy weapons. And in order to do that, to have this level of cooperation, we need strong institutions in every country. And that is why I believe that in order to get a better endgame, a better vision of the end of this conflict in Mali, we need to have political stability, we need to have stability in the army, and those should be the priorities.
Do you think it's possible?
I think it's possible if all the friends of Mali, all those countries around the world giving money right now to rebuild Mali, also focus their attention on what is happening in Bamako, on what is happening with regards to the military, with regard to the political class, and help them to unite and to bring forth a strong leadership that can be heard all the way to Kidal.
I'm terribly sorry, because I know there's a number of you who want to add something to what's just been said, but I'm afraid we've run out of time, and that's it for the debate. So at this point, I'd like to thank very much my guests, William Jordan, Richard Young, Dougoukolo Konare, and from London, Omar Ashour. And do stay with us here on France 24.